Check this out. This is the Burmese python.
In Florida, the python problem is no longer a distant swamp nightmare, as it has started creeping closer to highways, headlines, and even homes. Officials hoped they had a solution when they silently released robotic rabbits in the Everglades. But everyone was shocked by what they had ended up unleashing. Before we dive into it, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more insane solutions to insane problems. The Everglades, a paradise under siege. The Everglades of Florida look unreal at first light, with a vast river of grass stretching to the horizon, water shimmering beneath sawgrass blades, and birds frozen like living statues in the middle of their hunts. It is one of the most unique ecosystems on Earth that covers roughly 1.5 million acres of wetlands. But hidden beneath all the beauty lies pure devastation. This is not an environmental disaster caused by factories or oil spills, and it is something that slithers, waits, and then strikes quietly. These Everglades have been under attack by an apex predator for decades, and this one does not even belong here. This attacker is a Burmese python that is originally from Southeast Asia, and it has turned Florida's wetlands into an ecological war zone. They were not just surviving in this unknown zone, and they are actually dominating it. The thing that makes this invasion especially unsettling is that it was not some accident of nature, because it is actually a human-made problem that slowly spiraled out of control. How Florida created its own monster exotic pets were booming in popularity in the 1980s and 1990s. At that time, Burmese pythons were sold as harmless novelties, as they had beautiful patterns, calmness, and a small size that could curl around a child's arm. Pet stores marketed them as manageable reptiles, but those baby snakes didn't stay small forever. Within just a few years, many of them grew longer than a car, and they reached 15-20 feet. Their strength also increased exponentially with their size, and their appetites became impossible for most owners to handle every day. Many owners made a reckless choice when they were faced with a massive predator living in a spare bedroom. They released them into canals, wetlands, and swamps, hoping that nature would take care of them. But in 1992, when Hurricane Andrew tore through South Florida, it flattened entire neighborhoods and destroyed exotic animal breeding facilities. When the storm passed on, no one was sure how many pythons had escaped into the wild. But they didn't need many, because the Everglades gave them everything they required to thrive and grow. They found everything from endless water temperatures to warm temperatures year-round, to prey animals that had never evolved alongside giant constrictors. For a Burmese python, this place was nothing short of paradise. A food web collapse in real time. The number of pythons increased rapidly when there was no natural predator capable of controlling them. Females were able to lay up to 100 eggs at a time, and their survival rates in the Everglades were disturbingly high. Today, the estimated range is from tens of thousands to possibly hundreds of thousands still roaming South Florida. The damage done so far is catastrophic. Populations of raccoons, opossums, foxes, and marsh rabbits collapsed by more than 90% in areas where the python has become established. Some mammals practically vanished overnight due to these uncontrolled predators hunting violently. Various large snakes were found with adult deer inside their stomachs, and this implies that they didn't even spare big animals. One python famously tried to eat an entire alligator, and this resulted in a violent struggle that killed them both. But the real destruction happened more silently. When small mammals were gone and birds of prey lost their food sources, the soil chemistry was altered dramatically due to the longer lingering of carcasses without scavengers. Entire chains of the ecosystems unraveled, and the Everglades was not just changing, but it was actually bleeding species. Florida had to act on this problem, and they had to act fast. The first failed solutions. Initially, the officials turned to the public for a solution to this problem. In 2013, Florida launched the highly publicized Python Challenge, where several cash prizes were offered for killing Burmese pythons. Media coverage was exploding at that time as amateur hunters were flooding the swamps with airboats, flashlights, and bravado. After several weeks of effort, The final count was painfully underwhelming. Only 68 snakes were killed so far. It was a symbolic victory at its best against a population of tens of thousands. It served only as a publicity campaign, not a proper solution. The professional approach came after this underwhelming solution when the Python Action Team and elimination programs paid licensed hunters at hourly wages plus bonuses for every snake removed from the Everglades. The number of killed snakes climbed because the technology was improved and night patrols were increased, but the math still didn't work. The Everglades is massive in size, and paying teams to cover millions of acres was going to cost millions of dollars. The removal rate still wasn't able to outpace the reproduction rate. For every snake they managed to remove, it seemed like more of them were born to take its place. They even tried using Judas snakes for feeding female pythons with radio trackers to locate breeding groups so that they could eliminate them. It helped, but only marginally. Florida by then was losing a war of attrition. Why humans couldn't win alone. After all these small decisions, officials understood one thing. The biggest problem is not in the effort, but in detection. Pythons are nearly invisible in the Everglades because they're camouflaged perfectly with all the reeds, mud on the ground, and water reflections. They can move silently and hunt only at night. They were blended so smoothly in the Everglades environment that even an experienced biologist could walk past a 15-foot python without even noticing it there. The state realized that in this war, brute force alone would not be enough to win. They needed a hunter that did not rely on sight like humans, and it should be able to track the snakes with their sense. Enter the dogs. After realizing that visual detection is nearly impossible, Florida wildlife officials turned to an ancient partnership with dogs. 2 specially trained detection dogs were brought into the program. The first one was Truman, a friendly black Labrador, and the second was Eleanor, a focused Dutch Shepherd. They were trained for several months to identify the faint, musky scent that Burmese pythons leave behind when they move through an area. Humans could not smell it, but dogs have a much stronger sense of smell than humans, and they could easily detect it. Once both these dogs were deployed in the Everglades, the results were immediate. The dogs located snakes within minutes, while the human team had to search for days. Handlers were constantly watching for subtle signs like a stiff tail, circling behavior, or a certain freeze. Flashlights followed them, and scales appeared. It certainly worked. But again, the bigger enemy was the python's scale. No matter how talented these 2 dogs were, they could not cover 1.5 million acres of land against the exponential rate of snake reproduction. Expanding this program further would have required hundreds of trained teams. It would have also cost enormous sums while putting animals at risk from heat, gators, and venomous snakes. Still, the dogs proved something critical in this war. They made it clear that scent is the key here. Before we move to the moral dilemma of this war, do subscribe to our channel for more incredible deep dives into wildlife ecosystems. The moral line Florida crossed. The officials asked a question after the dog's solution proved scent as a more effective way of snake detection. If scent attracted pythons so effectively, would bait be able to draw them out? Scientists started testing controlled prey attraction studies by using live marsh rabbits, which are one of the python's favorite meals. Secure enclosures were used to prevent harm, but the scent and movement worked exactly as expected. Pythons appeared on the surface, and when they were drawn in from surprisingly long distances. But the reaction to this program was immediate and furious, because several animal welfare groups condemned these experiments. Many images of terrified rabbits surrounded by massive constrictors circled on the internet, and they sparked outrage in the public as well. All the funding for this program vanished, and it was shut down. Florida learned what could work, but they were unable to ethically use these living animals. So, they decided to build one. The birth of the robotic rabbits. Engineers and biologists joined together to create a synthetic prey animal that could fool a python's senses without harming real wildlife. The result of this experiment was something straight out of science fiction. Each robotic rabbit was coated in synthetic fur that was built from weather-resistant materials. Inside their skin, thermal pads were installed to emit a constant heat signature that matched the real rabbit's body temperature to make them more like real animals. Chemical scent-releasing technology was also integrated to mimic natural prey musk, and some units even twitched slightly to show the presence of life. Several motion sensors, a transmitter, and a camera were hidden inside the rabbits, and they were charged with solar panels to keep the system running for several weeks. The cost of building each unit was nearly $4,000, and over 100 robotic rabbits were deployed in known python hotspots. They were all secured inside protective pens to avoid harm from snakes. The plan was not to kill the predators directly, but it was to lure them into monetized zones for precise removal. First, the program was incredibly successful. When it worked too well, this program showed great results because alerts started firing almost immediately. Cameras captured massive pythons approaching with tongues flicking and bodies coiling around the decoys. Removal teams moved in quickly to capture snake after snake. Then came day 3 of the mission. A camera feed showed something that was totally unexpected. A large, dark shape was moving fast through the water. It was not a python, it was an alligator. This gator was not confused, and it detected heat, movement, and the illusion of prey. In a single violent strike, it destroyed the robotic rabbit and crushed thousands of dollars of technology within seconds. This was not just one single isolated incident, because several alligators began targeting the decoys repeatedly. The robots had become irresistible to everything in the swamp. Worse, pythons noticed this, and the presence of large alligators caused snakes to avoid the traps entirely. Millions of dollars were being destroyed, and the project was on the brink of cancellation. The accidental discovery and AI. When the officials were preparing to shut everything down, one analyst noticed something quite extraordinary. The robots were not just serving as bait, but they were also recording everything. When data from all units was combined, a pattern emerged to the surface. The pythons were not moving randomly, and they were following specific corridors which were like hidden highways through sawgrass and canals. Alligators were also using the same routes. For the first time, scientists could see predator movement across the Everglades in 3 dimensions. That's when they fed the data into a learning AI. The system analyzed thousands of encounters, correlating time, temperature, movement speed, and predator presence. It found something that changed everything. It showed that pythons weren't just hunting prey, but they were also avoiding alligators. Florida was accidentally able to map the python's secret life. A total strategy shift. Armed with predictive data, hunters stopped waiting at traps, and they intercepted snakes along migration corridors. They tracked mature females, located hidden breeding grounds buried deep in the swamp, and targeted them directly. The results were staggering, as in 1 month, more pythons were removed than in the entire previous year. Entire nests were eliminated, and thousands of eggs destroyed. Conclusion: Florida did something stranger, and instead of defeating the pythons with robotic rabbits, they actually learned how they move and live. That knowledge was the most powerful weapon in this war. If you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting technological breakdown videos.